And one of the things that I noticed last week was that this defensive line, especially the tackles, they're starting to look more like an SEC defensive front.
You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts or on our YouTube channel, all over social media, or our morning newsletter, KCSN Daily, dedicated to your Kansas City Chiefs. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Welcome into episode 3 of Mizzou, That's Who, here on the KC Sports Network. I am one of your wonderful co-hosts, Tucker Franklin, joined with Gabe DeArmond and Maggie Johnson. It's a great day. We are 10 days away. At the time of recording this podcast, we are Chase Daniel days away from from the kickoff of the football season. Gabe, you made a really good point. Really, football season is here. Week 0 is here. On Saturday, it kicks off at 11, I believe. Austin Peay and Western
Kentucky. Big game.
Look at that. So, Gabe, how are you doing now that football's back?
I guess I have to start working again, but I'm just honored to be here on episode 3. Many people said we would never make it this far, but here we are, 3 weeks in.
3 weeks in, and we get to see Maggie once again. Maggie, how are you doing? How has it been? We do like to make jokes that you're on vacation quite a lot. You're coming back from another trip. How was your trip?
Oh, my trip was great. I will say, okay, I feel like I'm done for a while, and I think I need to be. First 10 minutes on the beach, stung by a jellyfish. I've been to the beach, I can't even tell you how many times, and go out there, I'm like waist deep. I was in Hilton Head. You can go up pretty far. Yeah. Stung by a jellyfish. I was like, okay, let's get to football season. Let's get to my only trips being to Como for a bit.
It's a good sign. Good sign of things happen. But before we get into we have a conversation here with Howard Richards, color analyst for the Tiger Football Network. Also did a whole lot of other stuff, too. You can check out his Wikipedia page. I did. It's very impressive. Before we get into that, you have to thank Charlie Hustle for outfitting us. I'm not wearing a Mizzou shirt today. I broke out the Timberwolf shirt. Shout out to Worlds of Fun. They're bringing back the Zambezi Zinger.
My favorite. It was my favorite growing up. We went there all the time. I couldn't get on. I didn't like upside down rides.
Right.
And I think that was like a regular one, so I loved it. I was on it all the time.
Yeah, I actually have a Zambezi Zinger Charlie Hustle t-shirt. I would have worn it if I knew that was the theme, but
I should have communicated a little bit better. But make sure to go check out their collection that they've got. They're going to have a Mizzou drop coming up soon. I believe it's a month from Tuesday. So on September the 23rd is going to be their college capsule for Mizzou. So make sure that you are subscribed to their notifications. Go to the Charlie Hustle website, and you can get notifications on the updates. But let's get into our conversation with Howard.
All right, as promised, Howard Richards there in one corner of your screen, and shout out to Howard coming off the injured list to join us today. So we appreciate that. Got everything done before the season started, and I guess you're ready for football like the rest of us, eh?
I am. It's been a quick, 9 months, almost 9 months since the bowl game. And actually, the time has flown by. But, once spring ball's over, I think the countdown makes that time just fly by. So here we are. And we are 10 days away from the season opener. So I'm excited. I've had a chance to see the team a little bit. Like a lot of the things that I've seen and read thus far. So let's get right into it.
Yeah. I don't want to date you and say you played a little while ago.
Okay, but I'm good with it, Gabe. I'm good.
Back when you played, there was actually an off season. There is no off season now, but I'm curious. I mean, players always say, hey, when they get to camp, the juices start flowing. Like in your role now, do you still get excited? Hey, the beginning of the season opener for you and Mike and Chris here in 10 days?
I do. I've played a lot of football, obviously. And this time of year, when you start talking about camps opening and press conferences and all that stuff, the blood really starts to get you going. Usually around my birthday, which is August 7th, I've either starting camp or been in camp. And obviously that's come and gone 2 weeks ago. And I pretty much always spent my birthday in camp. So for me, that's when it becomes more of a reality. And, whether it's high school football, college football, or the NFL, I still feel like I should be going into somebody's locker room and dressing out, even at 63. But it's still a fun time of year. I think everyone looks forward to the start of the college football season with great anticipation. And, with so much change this year with, NIL firmly entrenched. Of course, we've had the transfer portal for a little bit now. But with all the movings and comings and goings in college football and, the conference, teams changing conferences and moving across country, I think we have probably more to talk about this season than maybe ever before.
I think you missed your chance to suit up that COVID year when they went down to Mississippi State with like 47 guys. If you would have gone down on the sideline and said, Eli, I could go at right tackle, he'd have put you in. No problem.
I told him I've got a series in me. He thinks I only got one play. But listen, I know my body a little bit better than he does. So,
I was about to ask if you had any eligibility left.
Well, I mean,
you can come back, right, after you've been
I only played 4 years. I guess maybe the fact that I signed a pro contract probably eliminates me. Right?
Not anymore. That's
not anymore.
That's now all perfectly legal.
They give you like 8 years now too. So
hey, Brad Sham texted me this morning. He goes, "Hey, the Cowboys are still looking for a swing tackle." So I said, "Tell Gary, he sends me the contract, I'll sign it."
So I want to start there, kind of big picture. You were talking about the transfer portal, and I'm curious. I mean, look, it took me a while this camp to kind of figure out who everybody is. So how much? They brought in 25 guys in the portal over the last 2 years. I think it was 12 this year. So are you still kind of in that process of getting to know this team and some of these new guys and figure out who's where?
I am. I went to the scrimmage a week ago Thursday, and once you actually see guys on the field a little bit, you start to figure out who they are. The new linebacker, Hopper. Some of the new freshmen, Graciel, of course, Luther Burden III, but also some of the guys that had been out, a year ago. It's good to see Ennis Rakestraw back on the field again. You certainly got a new freshman quarterback in Sam Horn, the other kid that transferred in from Mississippi State. So there are, new faces at every position, the new running backs. But it'll take a while. Over the next 10 days, I'll get a chance to really look at the roster. And by September 1st, I'll have a much, much better feel than I do today for it. So hopefully some film. I'm sorry. Did
anybody impress you? Any of the transfers maybe, or the young guys that you saw? I know you said that you've liked a lot of what you've seen.
Yeah, certainly Hopper at the linebacker position. I thought Sam Horn looks like he's been taking snaps on a college team for a while now. He just looks, he's got the size. He looks very poised. His arm is strong. He's throwing with accuracy. And again, I saw him in a limited role, but what I saw of him is he looked a lot better than Jack Abraham did. And I was surprised at his size. I mean, he's a big guy. And I think today's prototypical quarterback kind of look like what Sam Horn looks like. And if size is an indicator, then Mizzou's halfway there. Now you just got to get the guy ready to go and get him producing and having results with his receivers. I think the wide receiver core is maybe the strongest group on the field. Very talented guys. No one really being what I call a superstar yet. Certainly Burden comes in with a lot of hype, but he's not taking a snap at all. And I hope people are very reluctant or, just want to pump the brakes on anointing this young man as being the savior for Missouri football. Because what he's going to find out, he's probably found out already, which was different for him at East St. Louis. There's guys on his roster that can cover him. There will be guys in this league that can cover him. So it's going to be incumbent upon him to figure out, how do I beat these athletes that are maybe as good as I am, but I've got to figure that out. I've got to figure that out with coaching. I got to figure it out from what I do on the field, whether it's working a little extra before practice or after practice. It's one thing to have great talent, but that's only going to carry you so far. You've got to utilize everything you've learned. You got to work at this. I mean, all the great players work extra, and Burden would be no exception.
I want to keep it there on that offensive side of the ball because I think obviously the biggest story is they lose Tyler Beatty to the NFL draft. There's a lot of production that they kind of have to start to make up there. I think I crunched the numbers, and at 36% of Mizzou's total offense last year came from Tyler Beatty, 39% of it if you don't count the bowl game where he didn't play in. So that's a lot of production coming from a guy. Where do you kind of think they start to make that up at? I know it's not probably going to be all one guy. You can't replace that one Tyler Beatty role with one guy. And you mentioned the wide receiver room being very talented. Where do you think they start to make that production up at?
I think at every position has to contribute. Okay, you can't just say, well, we lost Beatty, we've lost all of our offensive weaponry. And which is why I think they went out and tried to make improvements at every position, especially on offense. I think the impact that Tyler Beatty had on this running backs group, I believe, was immeasurable. He's playing for a really good assistant coach, one of the best in the business at Curtis Looper. Great recruiter, but a great teacher also. And I say that because I've talked to a number of players that Curtis has coached over the years. They all say the same thing. Saw Larry Roundtree III at Looper's wedding back in July. And he goes, I'm here because of Loop. So that speaks volumes. They all have so much respect for what Looper teaches. And then a guy who was somewhat unheralded like Tyler Beatty comes in and he only leads the SEC in rushing last year. But I think his imprint in the running backs room will go a long way. You look at a guy like Michael Cox, who is a really talented guy, maybe sort of behind the radar, but the guy has slimmed down, lost, 20, 30 pounds. And I believe that he's kind of a wild card. From what I saw of him in the spring game in 2021, I mean, he was running over guys, running around them. And he's one of those guys that, everyone talks about all the other ones in the room, but Cox is one of those guys I think that if he gets an opportunity, he's not going to blow it. He's going to take full advantage of it. And I think that's infectious. I think that spreads, kind of proliferates throughout that room. That said, I think my two concerns I have with the offense would be the lack of cohesion along the offensive line. And then, what kind of production will you get from the tight end group? It's just not there. Talented guys again, but they just are unproven. But what I hope happens is that Eli and his offensive staff really try to integrate those tight ends into the offense early on in the season to really see how they can contribute. But yeah, the offensive line is always going to be key, especially with a new starting quarterback, new running backs, some new key pieces. It's always going to boil down to how successful, how well, how cohesively your offensive line plays.
You're so right about that, the running backs, because we talked about this a little bit last week about how Mizzou has had great running backs. I mean, how many years? At least 10 years or 15 even, I would say, going back to when I was at Mizzou. And I just feel like we always have great running back leaders. And they're kind of that person, they take a lot of snaps and like the vast majority of them. But I feel like they do always, they're that kind of like a second coach. Like we have Looper, but you do have that leader that's there to be like, to give tips and do things like that. So I think we've been really lucky in terms of running backs. And I even said last week, I'd put the running backs we've had the past however many years up against really any in the SEC. Obviously Beatty. I mean, he was the leading rusher in the SEC, but I mean, Roundtree and Crockett. And I mean, you just keep going. And so we talked about that, about how it's an important role, but I think a lot of people are a little nervous about. but maybe they don't need to be as nervous about?
Yeah, I'm not nervous about it. My nervous factor would be just how well the line plays. You got a brand new center. You're replacing, even going back to what Eddie did the last 2 years. The guys that played before him, Tristan Castillo, and Evan Bain, and Mitch Morris, all those guys that have played have been, have had key roles in the success and production of this offense. So, there's always a little bit of hesitation about, who's taking snaps when some new guy comes in. I've heard a lot of good things about Connor Tollis, and the one thing I think of mild concern right now is that his weight is down. But when you're going through the heat of the summer, it's hard to keep weight on. I always struggle with keeping weight on. But now that your work level is going to sort of stable off, you're into your game weeks. You can start to add more poundage as the season progresses. So if he can maintain at least where he is now and add a few pounds, and I think he's a pretty strong guy, then I think he'll be okay there.
So Howard, Eli's an offensive guy. Everybody I think kind of thinks he'll figure out the offense. They'll be okay. I mean, defense, you tell me if you disagree with this. They went from being legitimately maybe the worst in the country to a little below average second half of last season. I think the goal is just start out a little below average and you might be okay. I mean, that doesn't sound like a big task for Blake Baker, but the way the first half of last year went, it might be a big task, especially with all these new guys.
It couldn't be any worse. It could not
exactly
have been any worse. I think
do you think they improved, or do you just think there was only one direction to go?
I think both.
Okay.
I mean, certainly the latter was true, but I think they actually did make some improvements. Some guys started to step up. The freshman,
Chad Bailey.
Yeah. Those guys, I think they really, for whatever reason, they got a clue and just started playing. I don't know if the pressure of playing so poorly forced them to step it up. But then, guys like Isaiah McGuire really started playing better. You got better production out of the interior defensive front, which you have to have in this league. And one of the things that I noticed last week was that this defensive line, especially the tackles, they're starting to look more like an SEC defensive front. You got guys plus, 310, 320 in there, and they're taller. You're not these 6-foot midgets running around. You got to have some size. You got some height on you too. Yeah. A bigger frame, because you're blocking guys. I mean, you're going against guys that are a big frame, 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". So I always said, look, if you put me up against a guy that's 6'2" or 6'3", at my height, I'm not getting beat. I'm not going to get beat by a guy at 6'3", not consistently anyway. I'm going to dominate against a guy like that. So, my mindset was probably a little bit different then, but I think there's a lot of truth to that. You have to have guys that can at least look the part. So when they walk up to the line of scrimmage, it's not like from the first play out there thinking, "Oh, we got this," because these guys are just little dudes out here. But you at least look the part. You won't know until you get the first smack down on the first snap.
You never know. Every now and then, a little dude can get something done, Howard.
Well,
so, those of us that are 5'8".
And I'm not discounting. Certainly, small guys can certainly pack a punch, and
just maybe not a defensive tackle. Yeah.
There you go.
You need to get off the bus team. You need those guys that get off the bus first.
Hey, listen, I'm with you guys that look great getting off the bus, but they probably should have gotten right back on that bus.
Well, kind of to go off of that.
I was just going to add, though.
Yeah.
On paper, I think they addressed the glaring holes from last year, especially from the start of the season. Now it's up to all those puzzle pieces, to develop and get ready to play on September 1st. And then you do it consistently, week in, week out, quarter 1 through quarter 4. That's the type of production that this team has to have from a defensive standpoint to win in this league, to be better than 6-6.
That's kind of something I wanted to talk to you about is what do you think the strength of this defense will be like now? We spent a lot of time talking about last year how they couldn't stop the run. We talk about the negatives. What do you think the strength of this defense is going to be?
At the outset, I think it's going to be the experience, especially guys from the secondary, the guys on the edge, Jeff Coat, McGuire, Chad Bailey, Carlisle, Chris Abrams, Drain, both had pretty good years. The freshman came on strong last year, DJ. You tell me his last name. Jackson, yeah. I was really impressed with DJ at the end of the season. But I think that experience, I think, the steps that they made toward the end of the season, that carries over through spring, throughout the summer. Everyone becomes more familiar with each other. And now, I think you still have a somewhat favorable schedule the first 3 weeks. Kansas State, it's a winnable game. You got to go out there and win it. They're not going to lay down, but this is not an impossible game. They're probably situated like Mizzou is. But it's a game that, if Missouri goes up to Manhattan, Kansas, and wins that game and doesn't trip up in week 1 or week 3, they should go into Auburn with a lot of confidence, and because I don't know that we know, I don't know that Auburn is the type of team that it wants to be right now. They've obviously had a lot of controversy down there with the head coach, and regardless of what people say, that stuff matters, and it's in the heads and minds of people. So again, those first 3 weeks are pivotal, and not only do you want to win those games, need to win those games, but you want to look good playing in those games in all phases, especially defense. So worry a little less about the offense outside of the offensive line, but you want to look good. You want to show that, man, we've taken all these weaknesses and we have ratcheted up our personnel, our play. We've got a new defense coordinator. We're going to play with more pressure. We're going to play with more of attacking style, and we're going to not allow big runs and big plays. Those are things that have to be eliminated early on. Those big gash plays, big chunk plays. And by the way, you got to get some turnovers. You got to force turnovers on the defense. So I know that it's been a little bit of concern thus far in camp. But, it doesn't matter until you get into the games. That's where I don't care what you do in camp, but, you've got to be at least working towards making a difference once you're playing against another opponent instead of your own people.
Yeah.
I kind of want to transition a little bit. We don't want to take up too much of your time today, but I kind of had a question I wanted to ask you about recruiting. So we talk a lot on here about, and I talk a lot to my other Mizzou fans about the importance of keeping in-state guys here. I think there was just a chart out that said something about the 2023 class and like the top 300 players, and Missouri had 9 of them. What do you think it'll take to see more Missouri guys stay home, and like what made you choose Mizzou?
Well, speaking of right now, it's going to take more wins and against better play. A better play against formidable competition, especially in the SEC. It's plain and simple. I don't know that there's any other formula than that. Once these players, when they look at the flagship, the biggest program in the state, and they see that they're winning and they're looking good and guys are making plays, that's what makes you want to become a part of that. And to some extent, that was what did it for me as well. Missouri has always had big play guys. I looked at it programmatically speaking. I chose Missouri because I had an inkling, although I didn't really know, but of course you think you want to be able to play at the professional level. And the type of offense Missouri ran at the time was, not run or not pass dominant. So there was a nice mix of run and pass, which from the standpoint of playing professionally, you've got to learn how to pass block, pass protection. And so, guys like Morris Towns and James Taylor, who, first round and second round draft picks at tackle, for me, those were the gold standards. And I felt that I could have the type of success that they did. And actually, JT should have been a first-round pick had he not gotten hurt and missed, I think, maybe 3 or 4 games in his senior year. But they were the role models for me, and I think they were probably among the best, the prior 2 or 3 years in the country, as good as any other offensive tackle tandem in the country. So they treated me well when I came in, and it just felt like home. You hear guys talking about Missouri felt like home. It did feel like home for me. I ended up canceling my 6th and final visit to, of all places, KU. Like, why would I want to go? Why would I go visit KU? I found my spot, and it worked out perfectly for me.
Now, people who do what I do were not around in 1978 to rank recruiting classes, but anybody that wants to go look, if you can find it, the class that Howard came in with, Howard, it's fair to say maybe the best recruiting class in the history of Missouri as far as what you guys went on to become, right?
See, Gabe, you're the only one who said that. And I appreciate you so much for that, because everyone talks about, this class and that class, and even all the great teams that Gary Pinkel had. And I kind of mentioned this to him once. I said, Coach, you put a lot of guys in the NFL and you had some great success, but, you never had as many guys drafted in one class as my senior year, in the 1981 draft. We had 7 guys. To date, tied only with the 1943 class. See, I've done my research. That's the highest number of Missouri players drafted is 7 in one draft. Now, there's some guys that got redshirted. There could have been even more in my class, 9, maybe 10 guys, if not for injuries and redshirts. But very talented. I think most of us, other than one, maybe Wendell Ray, went on to play at least probably 5 years. So maybe Bill Whitaker, but Eric Wright, James Wilder, Johnny Pohl, Ron Fellows, myself. Who was the other one? I can't even think of who it is right now.
Wendell Ray made a nice contribution to the University of Missouri about 25 years after that, too.
Someone called Shane Ray.
Yeah.
This DNA works.
I want to wrap you up with this. Just you've been around this place when it's going, when it's packed. And we've seen the last few years. And obviously, look, we're 8 years from Missouri really playing a meaningful football game. I feel like we do this every August and we say, man, this is like the most important year ever. But year 3 of Eli, these recruiting classes, you've got to do something to get these people coming back. I mean, I don't know what success is, whether it's 7 wins, 9 wins, whatever, but not putting a number on it, but just how big is this year for this program?
I have described it like this. I think this is a pivotal year. I don't think it's a critical year. I think depending on what happens in year 3 will determine how critical year 4 will be. Obviously, with the type of talent that has come in for the 2022 season, even though they're freshmen, there's a lot of expectation, and those that have also transferred in, but there's a lot of high expectations. Guys don't really come in now, and you don't really expect them to sit for a year or 2 or 3 like they do at Alabama. The expectation is that these guys are talented enough to play right now. And I think you have to have that. And I think that's what the expectation is with the players that Eli has brought in. So you made a good point. I don't know what that number is. I don't know what it equates from the standpoint of wins, but it certainly has to be seen in production on the field. Certainly not giving up tons of rushing yards. The defense has got to get off the field, more turnovers, offensive consistency, scoring in the red zone. That's the type of production that I want to see on a regular basis, on a consistent basis from week in, week out. If we have that, that win total could jump from 6 to 8, maybe 9. I don't know. So I do not put myself in that little bucket and trying to predict which games that Missouri is going to win. I don't necessarily think it's fair because I think it's what's determined is what happens throughout the week, from week to week. Injuries, what shows up from your opponents, all those things. But I think that the talent what Eli has learned as a head coach the previous 2 seasons bode a little bit better for this team this year. So I think they're positioned to take the next step. Whether they will or not, I don't know. But I think the puzzle pieces are there: talent, experience, atmosphere. They've got a shot to take that next step.
Well, Howard, hey, I'm going to be back in the press box first time in 3 years, so I look forward to seeing you. Keep Mike in line, and I know a lot of people will be listening this year.
Some things are impossible, man, but I'll keep. I got the old hook, the claw. When I need to talk, just put it around his neck and just say, "My turn."
Howard, thanks a lot, man.
Hey, thanks, guys. Great talking to you. Need me in the future? I'm all ready. I'm all yours.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Thanks, Howard.
See you guys.
Big thanks to Howard for joining us on today's podcast. Great conversation there. But before we get any further, if you are a Mizzou fan living in enemy territory, I've got a really good deal for you, and that's from our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. They're coming to the Sunflower State in Kansas, and it won't be long until you can bet on all your favorite sports from the comfort of your own home. And to celebrate, all new customers will receive $100 in free bets when you sign up using the code KCSN. Plus, one lucky customer will win a $100,000 free bet. That's right, $100,000 free bet. DraftKings Sportsbook is giving you $100 in free bets just for signing up today, and no deposit required. That's my favorite part about this. Soon you'll be able to bet on money lines, spreads, props, and more with one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, DraftKings Sportsbook. Plus, you'll be entered to win a $100,000 free bet when you sign up. All you have to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and sign up using the code KCSN to get $100 in free bets to use once mobile sports betting hits Kansas. That's September 1st. We've already had that date come out, so make sure you are ready to go if you are living in Kansas by September 1st, Mizzou's first game. Plus, one customer will win a $100,000 free bet. That's code KCSN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 800-522-4700. Must be 21 years or older. Physically present in Kansas. Eligibility restrictions apply. See terms at DraftKings.com/sportsbook. Subject to regulatory licensing requirements. One per customer. $100 issued as four $25 free bets. No purchase necessary for sweepstakes. Void where prohibited. Ends first day. DraftKings is allowed to operate in Kansas. See terms at dkng.co/KS. Now that our friends at DraftKings are taking care of us, thanks to them, make sure that you go check them out. Let's talk a little bit about that conversation we had with Howard. I really liked his optimism about the defense, especially. I know for me personally, that's one of the big concerns I have. Hearing him be a little bit optimistic is promising to me.
Well, I like that he said, because I agree. It can't be worse. You can't be worse than you were the first 6 games last year, right? Right. It got to the point, it was like, watching a Chiefs game for 2 years, you go, I just get one stop, they'll win. Now, Missouri didn't have that offense, right? But it was the same in that you were going, just get one stop. See how that feels. See if you like that, then maybe you do it again. But I think the big key is, and this ties into what he was saying, you just can't have any more Tennessees. You can't have any games that are over in the first quarter this year. Yep. That's what he was talking about, progress at the end. That's progress to me. Just compete, because there were just too many times Missouri just wasn't competitive last year.
Yeah. No, I agree. I like honestly a lot of what he said. I'm excited that he said he saw some great things from the transfers and the young players. I know that that's a lot that we talk about in my Mizzou Twitter group chats. We brag about how, we stole Hopper from Florida and we do all of this. So, and even though I know we've touched on this as well, Hopper really only had a good game against us last year. But it was enough for us to be like, okay, he can come play for us. So I'm excited that he was seeing positive things from transfers. That's why you go to the portal.
Yeah. Well, and I'm interested. I'm interested. So we got to see briefly. I don't even call it a practice Saturday night. We saw them walk around. They played against air, whatever. Yeah. But we were there to write down the first string and second string on offense and defense. And I'm interested to see. And part of it is because they have so many transfers. But if Saturday night was an indication, Luther Burden's the only true freshman playing a major role on this team out of the gate. And I'm not saying that necessarily is a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know what it means, but I do find it interesting because, like Howard was saying, hey, these guys are brought in, and the thought is they're good enough to play day one. Now, maybe that's a really good sign, right? That it means they hit on all these transfers and that some of these guys got better and they don't need these guys to play day one. But I mean, Luther's going to start. Other than that, Sam Horn might be the backup, but I'm not sure there's another true freshman on the 2 deep right now. So like I said, I don't know what it means. I just find it interesting.
I was doing some research into this Mizzou recruiting class, and kind of, I think there's a discussion that came up in one of the group messages I was in about Odom recruiting compared to Drinkwitz recruiting, and I think that this is one of those things where I was looking up this 2022 class was 12th in the country, 4th in the SEC. That's the highest that the Mizzou's been in a long time in the SEC. So thinking about that in terms of, bringing those guys in and having a class that high and then not having any other 2DP is a little surprising to me. Sam Horn, I was encouraged to hear Howard say that, he looks good. That's what I want to hear from Sam Horn. I want to hear those good reports from Sam. Hopefully he can really be that quarterback of the future. I'm a very big pro Sam Horn guy. But yeah, I think that's incredibly interesting. And I wanted to ask you about that, Gabe, how that kind of, I said practice in air quotes was.
Yeah, it was. I mean, look, I'm big on, if I can't tell anything, I don't want to lie. You can't see anything. We were there to see the depth chart. And, we were kind of tweeting out, hey, there was nothing live. And then we were getting videos from fans that there was live stuff. And I'm like, well, there was no live stuff when we were allowed to be sitting in the stands. That's all I can tell you, right? And so I don't want to come out like Howard went and saw a scrimmage, so I'm going to trust what he saw. He knows football. He can tell you something. I haven't seen a quarterback throw a pass against a defender this month. I don't know who's good, bad, or indifferent, right? What I'm going to learn about this team the same time you guys are, about 7:00 next Thursday night. That's when I'm going to have any idea what this team is.
Do you think, I will say, I was reading Power Mizzou. I feel like I have to give like my Power Mizzou thing like every time.
I appreciate that.
You're
I don't even pay for that commercial.
Yeah, this is free. But I saw that on what you put on Power Mizzou was that Abrams Drain was set up to, you think, do punt returns?
He was the one who was back. Now, does that mean he's doing it? I have absolutely no idea. And like, people will laugh at this, but could it be as simple as Eli going, I'm not going to put Luther back there with 2,500 people in the stands?
Yeah.
I'm going to unveil him week 1. I mean, he said in a pre-camp interview he thinks Luther's going to return punts. I think he at least has to get a shot, but I don't know. Chris Abrams-Drain was the only guy we saw do it on Saturday.
I don't think they're trying to give away very much. If they're anything like NFL training camps, which I know that football coaches are weird in the fact that they think that everyone's out to get them and everyone is out to just to steal their ideas and give their ideas away to the other team. Football coaches are weird like that. So it doesn't doubt me that if he tried to just throw something out there to throw everyone off.
Yeah.
Not that Abrams-Drain wouldn't be good.
Yeah. Right. I think you've at least got to give Luther a look, though. They are in practice. Like, I've seen some practices. They've been trotting 5 guys back there, and he's one of them. But, yeah, I think, hey, once you – I'm not sure Louisiana Tech's going to be a blowout where you can just do whatever you want to do. But, like, week 3 against Abilene Christian when it's 38-0, trot them out there then if you haven't done it before.
Could be fun too against that Abilene Christian game to see some of those freshmen to kind of make this conversation go full circle if they don't get redshirted or whatever. Is it 4 games now? Is that what you have? Is 4 games you can play before getting redshirted? Which I think is this is kind of going to be off topic or off track. I think that's a good idea. I think that is better than just like the 1 snap you can't redshirt anymore. That's a bad idea. Having it to where you can play 4 games and being okay, yeah, let's redshirt this year. That's a good idea.
It also keeps players engaged. Like, it's really
100%.
hard for a kid because you've got to kind of make that determination early, right? A kid's going to know if he doesn't play against Abilene Christian under the old rules, he knows he's not playing. You've now got 10 more weeks and 8 months after that to convince this kid to keep going to practice, keep getting in the weight room, keep doing everything right. And that's tough for all these kids who come from being the stars of their school to come and go, yeah, I'm just going to go be a good teammate. Like, some people handle that better than others.
Well, I hate the injury aspect of football too, because obviously we've been around it forever, and you don't make it through a season without an impact player typically getting injured. It's just almost impossible. But I do like that, if you make it to that 9th or 10th game, you've played almost that entire season. And then maybe if you get injured in game 2, you still have that chance to play that season. And I like that aspect of the 4-game rule as well.
Well, and hey, that's the best news of camp for Missouri. So far as we know, everybody can still play, right? I mean, there have been no season-ending injuries in the last 3 weeks, at least that we've been told about. And there are places that's not true. So that's the best news, I'm sure, for him this month.
Are they able? You might know this question, Gabe. Are they able to practice full pads most of the time, or is that is a Drinkwitz not like to have them full pads, or what's kind of the rules there?
They do. I don't know the exact rule. I mean, I think there's like an acclimation period. The first 2 days you can't. But then I think you're free to do it. But I know he said that basically there's rules. You can only have 2 practices that are more than 50% like scrimmaging. So I don't know what the rules are. I mean, I've watched a college football team practice with a towel because they weren't allowed to do it with a ball, but nobody could tell them they couldn't practice with a towel. So, rules in college sports are kind of they're amoebas.
That's a good way to put it. That word threw me off, but after I started thinking about it, I was like, that's a really good way to put it. So Maggie, you asked, you took the pulse of Tiger Nation, I should say, and you got some questions for us to answer. What do you got for us?
I do. I have a few. Let me see if I can find them. So we get a lot of questions about fan engagement. It's a very popular one, and luckily for Gabe, it's for him. Well, I mean, I guess it could be for any of us because it's media, but I mean, I don't consider myself media, so maybe it's for you too. So at Down for Mizzou asks, what are your thoughts on how the media can raise fan interest without getting to show much on the team in the offseason?
He's going to hate my answer to this so much. That ain't my job, bro. My job is to cover the team, not to raise interest. I mean, we want people to be interested in them. But like, that's their job. That's Desiree Reed-Francois' job, Eli Drinkwitz's job to figure that out. I mean, look, selfishly, would I love every practice to be open the way it was up till 2012? Absolutely. It's not that way anymore. I don't have a huge problem with it. I think it is. I do think you have to think a little bit about, if you're Kirby Smart, you can go, yo, media, go stand 800 yards away and we're going to laugh at you, right? But if you're a program that's trying to get more people back in the stands, I'm not sure what the harm is of letting Luther do some interviews, letting Jamarian Wayne do some interviews, Sam Horn do, because look, I can tell you guys, nobody is there in August to write stories that make them look bad or anything like that, right? It's all, nobody's ever going to be more popular than this month. Everybody thinks they're going 10-2, 12-0, whatever it is. And so we're just there to kind of write stories about what's happening. So I'd like it, but the ultimate answer is kind of like Howard's answer to when you said, what do they have to do to get recruits? They just got to win games. I mean, that above and beyond everything else. When you were there, and I mean, I grew up and I went to Missouri games in the late 80s and early 90s. You could count on the same 35,000 people being there every week. I mean, that was the attendance. It wasn't going to change. You went into the season going, wow, if we could find a way going into the last week of the year to maybe be playing for 6-5 and playing the Bluebonnet Bowl, that'd be amazing, right? Never happened, but it was a nice thought for a while. But then when I was in school, they went to a couple bowl games and it built a little. And then Gary came and got what he got going. And they actually sold out games. And it was, it was a great atmosphere. People want to be associated with a winning team. That's more than anything else. All the other stuff goes away. If they're 10-2, there's going to be people in the stands. And if there's not, there's going to be whatever there were last year in the stands.
Do you think that kind of holds true to the athletic department instead of the media raising interest, so the athletic department raising interest? At Pack the Zoo asks what the athletic department can do. Because here's the thing for me, and this is what I never understand. Columbia is a decent sized college town. It's bigger than a lot of the college towns that we play against. And I know a lot of people come from Kansas City and a lot of people come from St. Louis. Why can't we get people from Columbia? Because I do feel like there's a lot of people from Columbia that do not go to those games. It's crazy to me.
It's, I mean, you could do entire shows on this, right? I mean, look, people ask me about the fan experience, and I say, I literally have never bought a ticket as a fan to a Missouri game. I don't know. I went as a student. My parents bought me tickets a few times growing up, but I don't know. I don't sit out there, so I don't know what they can do. I don't know if it bothers people that the bathroom lines are too long or that they don't have enough stuff to do. Because when I go to sporting events, I go to watch the game. But I think that's not necessarily what a lot of people do. But are there things they can do? Like I've seen, I saw a thing on Twitter today, Florida selling tickets at Costco, and everybody likes to laugh at that, but having people there is better than not having people there. Who cares how it happens? I mean, if you have to give tickets away free, then give tickets away free, because what happens is those people go to games and maybe they go and say, you know what? That was fun. My kid liked running around on the hill, and my 15-year-old watched, and man, he really likes this Brady Cook dude. He wants to see him play more. And so they come back the next week, and then it kind of becomes what they do. So many places in the SEC, they go because, well, that's just what you do on Saturday. It's what my parents did on Saturday. That's what my grandparents did on Saturdays. And that is not the culture of Missouri fans. And the only way you change that is just to win a whole bunch for a long time. But the truth is, like, I don't know, guys. It's not bad sitting on your couch being able to flip and watch 9 games on TV, and that's a tough thing to battle against.
Incredible. It's really not. It's honestly, I love watching games at home, or I love being the fan experience. I do like being there as a fan. I like mingling with people before. The issue is I live in St. Louis. I don't like driving there. I don't, especially for 11 a.m. games. I don't like doing that.
Or for night games, right?
Mm-hmm.
That too, because by the time you get out of town, it's been an hour since the game's over anyways.
Right. So if you're coming from St. Louis to tailgate for a game, you are either getting a hotel, unless it's a 3:00 kickoff, you're getting a hotel the night before or the night after, one of the two. Mm-hmm. It is a 9-hour day probably at the stadium, right? 2-3 hours before, maybe an hour after. The game's going to take 4 hours because every game takes 4 hours. You've probably spent $400-$500. You get back on late Saturday night or Sunday, you got to work. I mean, it is an investment for people, and it is on the team to give people reasons to decide that investment is worth it. I mean, Maggie, you're like one of the most diehard Missouri fans probably out there, and you're just saying, yeah, I don't know, I'd kind of rather watch at home, right? That's what these schools are fighting against. I know a lot of my Twitter group chat, they get kind of upset with me. I mean, I'm planning on going to more games this year, but I mean, when I have other things going on, I'm also female. We have people keep getting married and having showers, which is a whole nother topic. You've used all your vacation days in the last 3 months. We know that. So.
Right. But I mean, it's just a process. That's the best way I could put it, is it's just a process. And then it's also you don't want to go by yourself. So then it's convincing someone else to go with you. And I mean, last year I went to the Kentucky game. It was awesome. We stayed for the weekend. And, I'm buying my friends tickets as well. So, I mean, that it's kind of the way to get people to go. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating. You want to see a full stadium. You want to see a full stadium when you're watching it on TV. Because a lot of people are like, oh, it's just me. It's not going to matter if I don't go. That's not going to show any difference on the television. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's frustrating as a fan on both sides, going, not going.
I think it's really interesting too, because these conferences are signing these big, huge mega TV deals, right? And then it's like people get upset when no one's showing up. Well, you sign these big, huge mega TV deals so people don't have to show up. So it's like one of those things where it's, okay, I mean, you're doing one thing and then being upset of the ramifications of its actions, all right? I That's just one of those things that I always find really interesting is that they go out of their way to make sure they can take all the money that they can from TV networks and then be shocked when people decide to stay home and watch it on TV.
Well, and the hard part for a college fan is like it is a direct impact on the product. I mean, the more people that go, this is not pro sports where everybody's making the same amount of money. Does it ultimately matter if 78,000 or 28,000 go to Arrowhead Stadium on Saturday? I mean, probably in some way, but the Chiefs are still going to have roughly the same amount of money to spend and all that. But you don't get to draft kids. Like, they have to want to come there. If your stadium's empty, they're less likely to want to come there. So the college fan has a much more direct impact on it. And I never tell anybody how to spend their money or how to spend their time. Totally up to them. But when it is very obvious, and I say the same thing about NIL, like, I have no problem with a single person who says, I'm not spending my money on NIL. Cool. That is, but you also forfeit a little bit of right to bitch that the team's not as good as you want them to be, right? If you don't go to games, if you aren't contributing to that, like, your frustration on Saturday when they're losing at Auburn rings a little bit hollow because, and I know that's not fair to college fans, but that's what the game is. And that's why it's so hard in this league. And when they joined, Gary Pinkel said, we've got to be all bought in on every level. We're 10 years in, and I don't know if Missouri's all bought in on every level.
Yeah. Maggie, you got any more questions for us, or are we good to wrap this up?
I actually have one more.
Okay.
It kind of goes back to recruiting a little bit, but it's from @CMDub. How committed will Luther Burden be to staying with the team after this year? And then I know we were talking about getting into records. It's kind of why I wanted to ask that. What's our record need to be to keep those types of players?
Yeah, it's a fair question, but like, I don't know, man. Let's enjoy the next 12, 13 games and see what it's like, right? We understand what it is, but I just don't think it's a hypothetical that it does anybody any good to get into before the first game's even been. I mean, dude's got his own potato chips now, right? Like, I don't know. Is he getting that somewhere else? I'm not sure he is.
I mean, and the fact of the matter is that we could probably win 10 games and he could still choose to leave. I mean, that's the reality of the situation in the new transfer portal NIL world, is that it just nothing may be enough.
Right. I think Maggie just picked him to win 10 games. So,
no, hope so.
Oh, shoot.
Well, let's do that. Let's talk about this. Let's give predictions. Howard didn't want to, so we have to. That's kind of how it works off. I guess, should we just run through the games and just say win or loss?
Sure.
Let's do it that way. Start off Louisiana Tech. That's a dub, right?
It's a win, but it's going to be closer than Missouri fans want it to be, I think.
I would agree with that, sadly. Week 2, September 10th, Manhattan, Kansas. I will be in attendance against Kansas State. What do we think, guys?
Go ahead.
Okay, let's hypothetically give them a W. Let's hypothetically say Kansas State fans very confident going into this game. If you've read Twitter, very confident going into this game. Let's go ahead and say that our run defense has improved and we win that game. Because here, the way I was looking at it is I'm hoping we take Auburn or Kansas State. Not saying we will, but I'm trying to factor that a little bit into my final prediction. So let's go. If I'm going to pick one, that's hard because I should pick an SEC one. But I would really like to beat Kansas State. I'm not lying.
Kansas State fans are very confident for a team that has Adrian Martinez as their quarterback. But I have a hard time thinking that Deuce Vaughn's not going to do anything against this defense.
I've spent some long days covering games in Manhattan, Kansas. I would hypothetically not give Missouri a win in that game, but that's just my guess.
But we did have multiple in the late 2000s because I'm a little. This is again, I'm spoiled. None of my time spent at Mizzou did we ever lose to K-State. Not a single time.
Wow.
So I know, considering we lost to them like 13 years in a row.
Most of the times, right?
Most of the time. I mean, not. We're 60-38 against them. So
but
let's give us a little bit.
Most of the Bill Snyder times.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I was there from 06 to 10, and I think we beat them 06 to 11 or whatever that was. It was 5 years in a row. So I never saw us lose to them. I would
I'm
love
with
to.
you though. It's like K-State or Auburn.
Yeah.
You kind of got to win one of those to get where you want to get. And if I'm picking one, I don't know why. I just think Auburn's a little more likely.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll take it. We get a revenge game against Kansas State next year without Deuce Vaughn. So I mean, I'll take the Auburn game if we have to.
I mean, bottom line is if they're going to get where they want to get, they've got to be 3-1 after 4 games. How they get the 3-1, whatever. Right.
Exactly.
So I'm just keeping track here. Gabe and I both have him at 1-1 after 2. Maggie, you got him at 2-0 after 2. Abilene Christian, I'm gonna chalk that up as a dub. They don't even
if
have.
That's a loss. Cancel the season.
They
Not
don't even
kidding.
Podcast is over if that's a loss.
Cancel everything. Yeah.
It's fair. And this is the big one. Auburn on September the 24th. I'll give them a win for this one just because I think I said at the first episode of this podcast they need to be 3-3, like 3-3 in their first 6. That is a necessity for this team, and I think I'll give them this one.
I would pick them to win because I found out like it does no good to be the wet blanket before the season starts. Like if I had a DraftKings account, I wouldn't actually do anything with this game on it, but I'll go ahead and pick them to win.
So I'll take the loss then. I'll take the loss.
So everybody's 3-1. Yeah.
3-1.
Georgia, you can skip that the same way you can skip Abilene Christian.
Yeah, Georgia, that one's going to be now. Missouri and Florida on October the 8th. I think this one's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I
don't know what
I'm
to
giving
make
us I'm giving us a loss on this one, only because it's in the swamp. I don't think Florida is going to be anything special. I think they'll probably finish around 4th or 5th in the SEC East. But I'm gonna give us a loss because I think playing in the swamp, we had Drew Lock, we killed them, but we don't have Drew Lock, so
I don't think I could take myself seriously if I pick them to win at Auburn and at Florida, right? Like they might, but I'll take a loss in this one.
That's a tough road schedule as well when you start to look at the games that they go to in the SEC. Now Vanderbilt, I hope we can skip over this one like we did.
Yeah.
It better
a
be.
W on homecoming. A W on homecoming.
Listen, that's all fair. Now South Carolina on October the 29th. This game's going to be I think this game's going to be a rock fight.
It always
is. This
Every
is what
year.
determines if Missouri's better than most people think. Because I think Missouri will be an underdog in this game. If your program is where your program should be, I think you win this game. So, I mean, I'm going to pick them to win it today. That might be different in 2 months, but
yeah.
I'm going to give them the W in this one. I have written down South Carolina or Kentucky. Like those are my two that I'm like, which of those two do I think? I'm going to go ahead and give them South Carolina because I'm going to give Drinkwitz the benefit of the doubt. He's 2-0 against them. We're 3-0 in the last 3 years against them. And man, those games are crazy. That's the only thing is you never know what's going to happen. We've had monsoons. We've had the goalpost boink. We've come back from like 3 touchdowns down. I think they've come back from, the Monsoon game. They came back from however many. It's going to be crazy, I'm sure. It always is. But I'm going to give us the W on that one.
4 games left here in this season. I think we all have them sitting at the same record of 6-3.
5-3. 5-3.
Did I add another W? I think I did.
Yeah.
5-3. Yep.
Yeah.
Math's hard.
So it's counting.
Yes, counting, math. It's all. I went into podcast, not math. There's a reason. So we're looking at Kentucky now. That game is right back to back. So that South Carolina game could be a real momentum hinge point in this season, especially if they drop that and then go have to play Kentucky. That's a tough one. They're ranked 20th in the country right now, which I kind of
Kentucky's good, guys. Yeah. Like Kentucky's good. They're a lot better than South Carolina is.
Yeah, I think I'm giving us the loss on this one. The only reason they were even in my hunt is just because it's home, and we played them in those we play them in those stupid close games at home as well. I think only a couple of them have been outside of 10 points. I mean, out of the amount we've played, I think maybe 3 have been outside of 10 points, or maybe even 4, and 2 of them were them and 2 of them were us with those, and most of them are close games, including last year. But I think I'm still going to give Kentucky the edge because it's hard to pick against them when they've kind of owned us a little bit. So,
yep.
They're good. I don't like that, but they are. Now Tennessee on November the 12th. This is a team where I don't know anything about this Tennessee team. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, Hendon Hooker's back. Josh Heupel puts up a lot of points, and boy, they embarrassed Missouri last year.
Yeah,
I can't even do Tennessee the disrespect by picking Mizzou in this game. They beat us by that bad that I absolutely have to pick Tennessee.
And
I feel like I would be doing them a big injustice by doing
Tennessee's got a chance to be like 7-2. One reason I'm looking forward to this game, like I've been to that stadium, but there have been 25,000 empty seats because Kentucky's no good. I'd kind of like to go to that stadium with 108,000 people and see what it's like, you know?
Yeah.
But I think Tennessee wins.
Yeah. This last part of the schedule, I think.
So we've got them 5. We've all got them 5-5 with 2 games to go, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
You obviously have the the non-conference game the second to last week of the season.
New Mexico State.
Yeah, New Mexico State. Should
So
be
that's
a dub
bowl
for
eligible,
everybody.
6-5.
There we go. And now we've got Arkansas, number 19 Arkansas, by the way. Sam Pittman, fun fact, former Trenton High School football coach where I went to school. Not at the same time that I went to school there, but same place as Andy Hill, longtime Missouri assistant. They were both in Trenton. So anyway, what do we got for Arkansas?
This is where I get to 7-5. I picked Missouri to win this game. They're not as good. Arkansas is probably a better team, but like last game of the year, Arkansas they have the meanest schedule in the history of college football every year, just playing in that division. And, last game of the year, day after Thanksgiving, weird things happen. I'll take Missouri to get them to 7-5. Do I believe it? I don't know. I could see 5-7, but I can see 7-5 too. And why piss everybody off before the season even starts, right?
I'm with you. I think they can take this game. This is one of those two, with it being at the end of the year. These two teams could be on completely different trajectories than they're projected at the beginning of the season. So I think that once you get down in here, especially like South Carolina, Kentucky, Tennessee area, you're like, well, we have no idea how these teams are going to look at this point in the season. So I think getting a dub against Arkansas is good. They've kind of owned Arkansas. Let's be honest. They've kind of owned Arkansas.
Not last year as much, but
yeah, up until last year, really.
Right. But
yeah.
Listen. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go against you guys on this one, and I'm gonna give Arkansas the win. I have us at 6-6. I think that's. I mean,
of all the things I expected when we started this, me picking Missouri to have a better record than Maggie was not on the table. I legitimately thought Maggie was going to be like, yeah, I'm afraid they're going to lose to Arkansas and end up 11-1.
I mean, some Twitter people hate me about this as well. So we're on the same page there, Gabe. But I just think Arkansas, yes, they lost a lot. They did. But they have those players that just keep coming back. Bumper Pool. I'm like, are you ever going to leave? That's how I feel about Bumper Pool. But I just feel like they just have a little bit of an edge. I'm ready also for KJ to kind of leave too. So I was ready for Treylon Burks to leave, and then they got Hazelwood from Oklahoma. So it's just, some more talent in there. I think they're going to be beat up. I really do. I think it's a better game than it was last year, but I'm not sure if I see them taking the W on this one.
So we all kind of got them hovering around 500. Best case scenarios, what we're looking at 7-5, and then 5-7, kind of that area as the floor. Maybe, is it fair to say?
I mean, I think if you go floor's 4-8, ceiling's 8-4. Maybe if everything's perfect and like some other dudes get hurt, 9-3, right? But in reality, 5-7 is the range I think everybody's looking at.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Agree. I think most people, with this being the freshman class that everybody's very excited about, I think people will still be okay at 6-6. I think we'll still keep a little bit of excitement, some engagement. People won't be like, oh my gosh, fire everybody. I think if we can make that
depends
bowl
a
game.
little how you get there. The interesting thing to me is what happens if Brady Cook throws for 3,500 yards and they're 8-4. Then it's a real interesting offseason.
Yeah. I mean, we all want that. So if that happens,
Don't tease me with your storylines, Gabe. Don't tease me with these hypotheticals.
Hey, I've already become the optimistic guy on this podcast, so my work here is done.
It's
no
happened
joke.
very
What's
quickly.
going on?
Yeah.
It only took 3 episodes to get Gabe on the positive side. Who knew it would have?
Just wait till after Louisiana Tech.
Well, we will preview that Louisiana Tech game next week. Will only be a matter of days, a matter of moments away from the kickoff of college football season for the Missouri Tigers. We'll be back with you guys next week. So thank you for tuning in to this episode of Mizzou. That's Who.